Okay, so the arguments, we're going to examine a couple of arguments today, and they're classified sort of as evolutionary arguments against naturalism, and I've chatted to a few of you about these already. So there'll be some repeated exposure to it, but also I think a way of formally presenting it. So firstly, these arguments are what we call their retorsion, okay? Or we can think of it as reductio ad absurdum, okay? And what that means is that's Latin for reducing it to its absurdity. So a really good example of what this kind of argument is, okay? It goes, someone goes, I love pizza, I love all kinds of pizza. Pizza's fantastic. And so if you want to reduce that statement to its absurdity, you would say, okay, so how about a pizza that's been squashed on the road by a tyre with lots of ants crawling all over it? You know, would you like to eat that? Okay, so you've reduced a statement to an absurd conclusion, all right? So that's what these arguments are. They're a form of reductio ad absurdum, another word, retorsion, that we use. Okay, and they're both I've talked about modus ponens to a lot of you individually, but never to the group collectively. So modus ponens are a form of deductive argument, okay? And they take this form, if P then Q, P is true, therefore Q is true. Okay, so just the if P then Q statement. So here's a good example. If my car has no petrol, if my car has no petrol, then it will not start, okay? And then you say, well, my car has no petrol, the conclusion, therefore it won't start. It does seem a bit ridiculous and clunky to write it in logical form like this, but that's a way of saying, well, is this true? Is this true? Then the conclusion follows, okay? It's a deductive argument, it's very useful. So the first argument's by a fellow called Richard Taylor. He is a philosopher. He died a couple of years ago now, probably 20 years ago. And he was also an international beekeeper. So he's good at keeping bees, so beekeeper and philosopher. So the argument that he presents, I'm going to describe it to you. I'm going to build up a case for each premise, and then we'll see what the conclusion is. So some of you have heard this before. So it says, imagine you wake up on a train. Okay, you're on a train, and you have no idea how you got on this train. You're just woken up and you're on a train that's going chugging along, and you look out the window and you see these sort of rolling green hills, okay? And you see this big sign written in boulders. It's like big rocks that are embedded into the ground. Welcome to Wales. Okay, so you're in the train, you've got no idea how you got here, where you are. And say, like, you just got plucked out of here. Like, you woke up on the train. Welcome to Wales. You would instantly suppose, I'm in Wales. That's where I am. How did I get here? Don't know. But I'm in Wales. That's what you would suppose. However, if you believed that this sign was generated by a natural process, okay, so what do I mean by a natural process? Might be something like asteroids falling from the sky. They fell from the sky and they just so happened to form this pattern. Welcome to Wales. You could believe that, like that could happen. And if it did, all right, if it just so happened to arrange itself that it said welcome to Wales, it would be irrational of you to believe you're in Wales. Okay, so what I'm saying there is, if you believe this has a natural explanation, all right, such as asteroids falling, or maybe the sheep came along and chewed the grass out there and it just exposed those rocks. If you believe it has some natural explanation, then it would be also irrational for you to believe that it's telling you where you are. Okay, that you believe, if you look at that, your default reaction is to believe that that sign is put there for the purpose of welcoming you to Wales. But if you believe it has a natural explanation, then it's irrational to suppose that it has that purpose. Okay, so let's build up another example. If you're walking through the forest and you find a gravestone, all right, and on the gravestone, here lies John Smith, died, cause of death, says all those things. Okay, now you would probably instantly suppose, John Smith, he's buried there. He died on this date. All right, but you could also suppose that that's not really a gravestone. What that is there was an earthquake, and then this gravestone-shaped rock jutted out of the earth, and then a bird came along and just pecked out some worms, and it just so happened to engrave these symbols on it. So you could believe that as an explanation for why it's there, but if you believe that, then it would be ridiculous and irrational to believe that John Smith is buried there. Okay, so there's two examples. And what they're saying is if we believe something has a natural explanation, then it seems ridiculous to believe it has a purpose. Okay, if we go back to the Welcome to Wales, if we believe it has some explanation that it's not designed, if we believe it has a purpose, if we believe it's put there intentionally, then it would be rational to believe you're in Wales. But if we believe that it's just fallen from the sky, asteroids, it would be irrational to believe you're in Wales. You're probably somewhere else. Okay? And the same with the gravestone. So these two, I've presented two cases here, but you could come up with infinitely many of them. Okay? They give rise to this first premise. If some phenomena, okay, that means like any event, any object, if some phenomena has a natural explanation. Alright, so asteroids falling from the sky, the bird pecking into the grave, then it is irrational to suppose it has a purpose. Okay? If that sign fell from the sky, it's irrational to suppose it's a sign. If the gravestone exists because a bird pecked it out, it's irrational to suppose it's a gravestone. So if some phenomena has a natural explanation, then it is irrational to suppose it has a purpose. Okay? The second premise says, our sense organs have a natural explanation. So according to evolutionary theory, our sense organs are the product of natural selection, aren't they? That what happened, how does an eye form? So this is the argument that the biologists make, is that what happened is there was an animal that had a mutation that allowed it to have a patch of skin that was a bit more sensitive to light than other parts of skin. And what that did is that gave it these survival benefits so that it had a greater chance of reproducing than all of the other members of that species around it. And so because it was endowed with these survival benefits, it's more likely to pass on its genes. And then as time goes on, the more powerful that patch of skin is at detecting light, the more survival benefit it endows on the creature that has it. And so it's that compounding. Okay, that's what natural selection is, isn't it? You know? So that's what evolutionary theory says, is our sense organs have a natural explanation. That really it's irrational to believe that they are designed. Okay, they're not designed, they're just a product of this meaningless process. Okay, and so then when we combine these two premises together, it is irrational to suppose our sense organs have a purpose. All right? We certainly act as if our sense organs tell us truth, but this argument says that's irrational. If you accept evolution as a mechanism for producing our sense organs, then it's irrational to suppose that they have that purpose. Okay, so that's the first argument. So that's what it says very explicitly. Okay, that's the argument he makes, and I've congested it into a logical form. All right, but the implication of this is, if our sense organs inform us of truth, then our sense organs are designed. Do we believe our sense organs inform us of truth? Therefore, our sense organs must be designed. Okay, so when I'm saying sense organs, I'm talking about eyesight, hearing, feeling, smelling, okay, all the things that we can sense with. All right, so this is the implication. He makes a very, what we call an implicit argument for God's existence. He's saying you can't believe in a natural process and that it has a purpose, that they contradict one another. Okay, the second argument is by a fellow called Alvin Plantinga, and it's pretty similar, but I think it's substantially different. That's why I will present it. So just talk about, like, we've mentioned natural selection a fair bit. Okay, beautiful theory. We have 3 mice. Okay, one of them's a little bit faster than the other. A snake comes along. It's going to eat the slower 2. The faster one's going to survive because it's faster. It's going to have kids. All right, it has another 3 kids. One of them's faster than the other 2. Snake comes along, eats the slower ones. And so natural selection says for a mouse to run fast, that gives it some survival benefit. So evolution selects for behaviours that we say are advantageous. It's funny, there's some philosophers that say all of our behaviour can be attributed to the 4 Fs. Who's doing biology and has heard of the 4 Fs? So there's fighting, feeding, fleeing, because you can fight or flight, okay? Fight or run away, flee. Fighting, fleeing, feeding, and reproducing. Okay? So, let's be aware of what that says. Evolution selects for behaviours that are advantageous, okay? It doesn't select for true behaviours, it only selects for behaviours that provide you with some advantage. So when you're confronted with a tiger, right? When you're confronted with a tiger, there are an infinite number of beliefs you can have, all right, that help you survive, but not all of them are true. So let's read through these ones, okay? If my goal is to survive, all right, that's what my goal is. The best way to accomplish this is for me to run away from a tiger when I see one. All right, that's our default sensation. I don't want to get eaten by a tiger. The best way for me to not get eaten is to run away. I'll probably do that. Okay, look at the next one. My goal is to be eaten by a tiger, and the best way for me to accomplish this, to be eaten by a tiger, is to run away from them. Okay, so this is a false belief. It's not true. Well, it doesn't coincide with our belief that we have, but it allows you to survive. Okay, so evolution could select for this belief. All right, evolution doesn't necessarily select for a true belief. It selects for a behaviour that is advantageous. This is an advantageous behaviour. It allows you to survive, but it's not true. What about the next one? My goal is to survive. In order to best do this, I must get as close to the tiger as I can. In order to get as close to the tiger as I can, I need to run away from it. Okay, another false belief, pretty similar to the first one. The tiger is God. In order to worship the tiger, I must run away from it. Okay, so all these ridiculous beliefs, okay, about our relationship with the tiger, but all provide you with the same survival benefit. So it's like evolution is not selecting for truth, it's just selecting for whatever provides you with an advantage that's going to help you survive. So this is the argument that one develops. Evolution selects for advantageous behaviours. Okay? Advantageous behaviours correspond with false beliefs. All right? When we go back here, I only listed 5. All right? But there's one true belief. Okay? And there are an infinite amount of false beliefs. So the probability of an advantageous behaviour corresponding with a true belief is very, very low. All right, and so that's why they've made this argument here. Evolution selects for advantageous behaviours. Advantageous behaviours correspond with false beliefs. Therefore, evolution selects for false beliefs. All right, so again, they're making that implicit argument. If our sense organs inform us of truth, then we should believe they're designed. Okay, otherwise they don't inform us of truth. They're just helping us survive. All right. Okay, so in our, let's stop there. In our journal, I've uploaded this PowerPoint dissector. We just pull the arguments out, the premises, and talk about them. Okay, talk about the premises presented. So see how we go.